All right. So let's jump into it here. We're talking about app scripts and access to unrelated tables with app scripts. And so quick refresher of what app scripts actually is. It's a custom script that you can use to automate previously manual tasks, right? And so the idea of adding a record to one table and then adding it again to another table used to be a manual process within TrackVia. Now we can automate that. It is written in Groovy, so it is a scripting language, very similar to JavaScript, but a little bit different in its syntax. And when can an app script really be triggered at this moment? Well, it can be triggered before the insert of a record, after the insert of a record, before the update or after the update, and then before delete or after delete. So choosing the right time to trigger the app script is actually pretty important, but for our simple example today, you should be able to do, we'll do the before insert and the before update. So if you need more details, we are going to start to build out our kind of tutorials about app scripts on developer.trackvia.com. So a quick reminder that you can go there to find that information. For today's example, I'm going to work with two different tables, one called equipment inspections and the other called maintenance. The idea is that when a user does some sort of equipment inspection, I'd like to say that if the machine does not power on, I'd like maintenance to also get a record added so that the maintenance team can get out here and check the equipment. So what we'll do is I'll show you the three ways that you can actually access an unrelated table. So you can save a record against a table that's not related. You can search for a record in the unrelated table, and you can also update a record based on specific criteria of an unrelated table. So we'll go through each of these. The first thing I'm going to do is actually kind of show you the syntax in this PowerPoint format here, and then we'll actually jump into TrackVia and show you how it's built. But it's really important, and I thought it'd be a little easier to explain if the text was a little bigger and I could highlight the fields as I went. So this is the syntax for saving a new record in an unrelated table. And so that first element there, save, is literally that. Go ahead and save a record for me. And so that's the word, the syntax that you're going to want to use there. The table name is the table that you are trying to save the record into. So for me, my users are adding a record into equipment inspections, and TrackVia will be saving a record into maintenance. So the table name here for me would be maintenance. Field name 1 is just a field that's within my maintenance table, the table I'm trying to add into. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm telling TrackVia, hey, for table 1, put in this value for me, right? This static value, if you will. And a static value can just be put in quotes, and it will always stamp in that specific value every single time into that field. So if it happens to be a maintenance process, for me there's a field called status, and every time I add a record, because somebody added a record in an equipment inspections, I always want it to say pending. No one's touched the record yet. So I can actually just put pending in quotes, and it's going to go ahead and add it for me. This will start to make more sense as we jump into TrackVia, but I want to make sure I talk through this a little bit as we go. And you'll see under field name 2, I did put in this current values. And so current values is a way that you can reference the specific value that's been put into a specific field at that time. And so for me, it's current values of field name A, which would be a field within my equipment inspections table. Search. Search can be done two ways. So the top one is to load one single record, and the bottom one is to find a list of all the records that meet my criteria. So today I'm going to show you the load record because we're looking for a one-for-one match from my equipment inspections to my maintenance inspections records. So one, we'll go ahead and search for a singular record. And map just is creating a repository, if you will, of everything about this specific record that I'm going to find, right? So in creating a map, I can go ahead and grab all the information, all the fields, just by searching on a specific field term. In the syntax where you see name, it's actually any word or phrase of your choosing that's just easy for you to reference later. So it's the name of the map, right? So we're naming the map. Typically, if you're using 2 words, the first word is not capitalized. The first letter of the second word is capitalized. So below I have INSP record, inspection record, right? And so I want to show you the context there. So LoadRecord is the actual syntax that you're going to use to go find that one particular record. And the criteria in which we find that record is broken down into 3 parts. You're going to give me the table name that we're going to go search in, the field name that we're searching against that contains the value, and then the last one is the search term. So this here again can be a static value, or it can be something dynamic out of the existing records that you're kind of referencing. Multiple records is a little bit different in that you're saying list map. So we're still mapping, but give me a list, right, of all of the matching, all of the records that match my criteria. Name, obviously, you can name that whatever you'd like. We're just naming the list map at this point. And then find is the correct term to find all of the records that match what I'm looking for. And same syntax as LoadRecord. So give me the table name, what field we're searching, and then what are we searching by. And TrackVia will do that work for you. The last one is update. And so update, that's the syntax, update name. But it is used in conjunction with LoadRecord or list or find, right, for us to then grab that record and then update each of them. So I will show you that today because you do have to still map the fields when you go to update those records. So the syntax when you put it all together for update is we're going to go ahead and map for a specific record. Then we will go ahead and reference my map, right? So name is what that is. And then in name, find me field name 1 and change the value to something else. So it's very specific in the way that we'll list this out. And then, of course, lastly, you'll say update name. So I'm going to jump into TrackVia here. And we'll go ahead and just jump onto the first screen. You'll notice I have 2 tables. And they are completely unrelated. So no relationship between the 2 of them. And what I want to happen is on add of an inspection, right, so I can put in an equipment ID, whether the item powers on or not, and any notes, I'd like for the no scenario to basically add a maintenance record. If it powers on, it basically passes my test and I don't need it to add a record to maintenance. So what we'll do here is we'll jump over into our table editor, table builder. And you'll notice that in the top header section there is application scripts. Now this does have to be turned on in your account to be used. So if it's something that you don't see application scripts there, please contact support. They'll be able to help you get this functionality turned on. And if we jump into there, it's a lot of, it's a little code builder. So this first one here, I've basically taken the syntax of my save, right? And this is every time I add a record to inspections, save a record into maintenance. So we kind of discussed this already. The syntax is say save, the table name, which is maintenance for me, and then I've listed out all my fields here. So I've mapped specific fields in my maintenance table. So I actually have a field called critical failure, date of last inspection status, etc. in maintenance, and tell me what value to put in there. So this first one, critical failure, I would like to say yes. The date of the inspection is the created date of the inspection record, so I can just use the term current values and reference created. The equipment ID is something that I'll manually enter into inspections, and so I can copy that over. And then, of course, notes I can copy into inspection notes. So syntax here is important. Let's say I miss a bracket or I go ahead and forget to put in a comma or something. TrackVia will not let you save that. And it will give you an idea of what's happened, right? So it's missing something. It's expecting to have the close bracket there. So we can put that back in. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now, I don't want it to add a record every single time because I don't want to notify maintenance if the machine power is on, right? It's fine. So what I want to do here is wrap this in an if statement. And so the first thing I'll say is if, and we are going to look at the current value of my field, which is power on, right? That was the yes, no toggle. And a double equal sign basically means identical to. And the static value there is no. So if power on equals no, then go ahead and run this save for me. And so these squiggly brackets close out my if statement to say, if this happens, then go do this. And in this case, we don't actually have to put an else in. We can just say, this is what we're doing. And I'll go ahead and save that. So now we can test it. If I come back to my dashboard here, let's look at inspections on the left, maintenance on the right. We can select the little add button for inspections and say equipment ID 12345. Is it powering on? Yes. Machine runs well, and save. So at this point, because I've marked it as power on, I would expect nothing to happen in maintenance. That's exactly what happened. Let's go ahead and add a new record, and we'll say 6789. Does the machine power on? No, it does not. Cannot get machine to power on. And we'll go ahead and save that. So this time, I would expect that a maintenance record is added. And if we jump over to views here, we'll see we have inspection 76789, cannot get machine to power on. And on the right-hand side here, we now have an additional record that we've added into maintenance that says, hey, machine 6789 doesn't power on. There's my last inspection date, which is the created date of my inspection record. And then a status of pending, my critical failure is yes. And it's as simple as me coming in here and assigning someone to the task or the maintenance. So save's pretty easy. Adding a record is pretty easy. As we get into more complicated items, like if I'm the inspector and I come in here and I add additional notes, for instance, to my inspection record, I'd also like it to update my maintenance record. That gets a little bit more complicated, so we'll build that one together. So I'll go back to my inspections table. Now, it's really important during the app script building process that you keep track of where is the data coming from and where is it going, because that will determine where you're writing your script. So for instance, I knew that because the trigger was going to be the inspection record being added, I wrote my script on the inspections table. Now, I'm saying when an inspection record is updated, I'd like to update the maintenance record. That means I will then write that update script in my inspections table as well. So you'll notice I have a before insert in here already. I'm going to go ahead and say add a new script, and I'll call this before update. And we can go ahead and say, yep, the event is before update. Okay. So you'll want to select the event type because that's what's actually going to trigger the app script from running. So in this case, the update's a little different, right? The record is already existing within our maintenance table. And so the first thing that we want to do is actually go find that record. So this is where the map comes in, right? So we'll say map, and I'll call this my maintenance match which means my maintenance record that's matching. Remember, you can name this whatever you'd like. And then we'll use our load record. You'll notice it does kind of have helper tips along the way, but you can also simply type it up. So load record, we're going to tell it what table to go look in. Main. We'll tell it what field to search by. In this case, I'm actually going to just search by equipment ID. I did copy that over earlier. And how do I know what equipment ID to search by? So this is where we're going to use that current values again. And you'll notice I can actually just scroll through and say, yep, I'm going to pick the equipment ID. So this is a little bit confusing because I've named two fields the same thing in two different tables. But this equipment ID references the one that's in the maintenance table. The current values equipment ID references the one that's in the inspections table, so the one that the user has manually filled out. Okay. And we'll want to finish or close this out as map. So what I've created now is a little repository of information about that record. And the second thing I want to do is I want to match the information that I've put into my inspection record to the fields that I want it to fill out in the maintenance table. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull up my maintenance table here so you guys can see the field names. But as I said, I want to, in the event that an update has been made to notes, to also update this field called inspection notes. So I can go, okay, great, that's the field I'm going to reference. We'll come back to our script. I'm jumping over to my previous tab here. And we'll say maint match. Okay. And what this does is it's giving TrackVia a reference. I'm using my map, maint match, which is what I just did above, to go find the field inspection notes. And I'm going to map that to the current values, the newest version of my notes. And I don't see it here in my list. I can scroll for it, or I can just type the whole thing out, but I did find it at the bottom, so I can say, okay, yep, I'm going to pick notes, so I'm going to get rid of that. And that's it. So now I've said the only field I want to update when I go ahead and update items is the maintenance match field. Okay. And I can just say now update maint match. So again, what I've done here is said I'm going to go ahead and map to maintenance match, find the record, maintenance by equipment ID. Then I'm going to find the field within that specific record called inspection notes and update it with the current values in the field notes in my inspections table. And then execute, right? Go ahead and update that record. So we'll save that. Now we can test. So we'll come back to our dashboard here. And we'll notice that inspection 7 is the one that's copied over with 6, 7, 8, 9. And our notes are cannot get machine to power on. And so we'll see identical notes here in inspection notes. So I'll jump into this record here and we'll add some extra notes and say there is a flashing red light above machine. Can save that. And successful save. When we come back to our view, we'll see that the same note has been added over here into our inspection notes. So by being able to reference unrelated tables, you're really opening up the door to be able to do anything across TrackVia, your account. So because we're looking at this as unrelated tables, that means you can actually reference a completely different app within your account. So I have asset management inventory, meaning I can go from my inspections app, my inspections record all the way into my inventory app into perhaps a different table there as well. There is no differentiation in app scripts between apps, and so all you need to do is make sure that your table names are unique. across the account, and you'll be able to reference them very easily through app scripts. The last thing I'll touch on here is that the if statement makes this much more powerful. And so you saw that I went ahead and added an if statement around my save criteria. By doing so, you can control when a new record's created, how it's created, and where it's created. And feel free to play around with the different before inserts and after inserts. And we'll tell you using current values, you'll want to use a before insert, so we're grabbing those values immediately and setting them somewhere. And lastly, being able to find a record is very useful for us because we can then use that to say, yep, I'm going to go ahead and map those items. If in the case that your app script does not run, you do have the ability to enable or disable your app script just in case. So if you wanted to still test out the functionality of your table but not fire out the additional record save, you can go ahead and do that. There's a button here to do so. Or you can choose to just comment out either one line at a time, which is 2 forward slashes, or an entire section by saying a forward slash and a star, an asterisk, and then below you'll do an asterisk and a forward slash. And that will comment out the script, that section of the script that you've marked. You'll notice when you do comment that out, it does turn green. And if you remove that, it will go ahead and highlight in colors. So red and blue being the primary colors that you'll see in there to help you reference those items. Some common questions. So I have heard people ask, how many fields can you update with this update script? The answer is as many or as few as you have in the other table. Now, notice that we are referencing by field name, so if you do change the field name within your other table, you'll want to come into your app script and update it as well. Otherwise, it will still run the script, but it will not update the field that you were expecting. It won't update anything. Current values isn't the only dynamic value that you can actually ask for. You can also change this to say previous value. So app scripts can actually help you keep track of any changes that you've also made within this table. So we could come in here and say, instead of stamping the current, most recent version of the notes, I'd like to see what the last version of the notes was. And that can become really powerful to either build your own little audit trail on specific items, or you can use previous value in your if statements. So if we came back to my before insert here, instead of saying if current values is power on, I could have compared the two to say if the previous value and the current value are identical, then don't update my record. But if they are not identical, go ahead and update my record. So there's lots to explore with app scripts, lots of fun things that you'll be able to do with it. We will try and publish more into developer.trackvia.com on the tutorials page to make sure that you have more examples to work with so that you can kind of see those in action. Thanks everyone for joining us today. If there is anything else, any questions or anything that you need from us, please feel free to reach out to support or to the product team. We're happy to answer any kind of inquiries that you guys may have. Again, my name's Ching, and I appreciate your time today.